Have your attention, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank y'all for being here today for our combined Sunday school group. This is a special time of the year, when we not only celebrate the birth of Jesus, but as a church, we think about our commitment to global missions and our partnership with the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. And every year we have missionaries, people representing the CBF and missions, to come to our church and share about their work. I'm very pleased to introduce our couple who will be going to Chile soon. They'll tell us about their work this morning and also lead us in our morning worship service. Blake and Bekah Hart will be recent graduates coming up in May, I think, from McAfee School of Theology. And they'll be then going to Chile, so they're going to share about all that. I'm very excited about getting to meet them, get to know them better, and I know y'all give them a good, receptive welcome here to Williams. We'll go to about 9:45. Choir members, if you need to leave a little earlier, I'll warn them that you're not walking out on them. So if you need to do that, that's fine. But about 9:45, we'll conclude, give everybody a break before we go into the worship time. Okay? So thank y'all for being here. We're looking forward to the work that they're anticipating doing in Chile, and also the work that the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship is doing around the world. Let's begin with a word of prayer, and I'll turn it over to you. Our Lord, we thank you so much for this wonderful time of the year. We're so excited about Christmas and Advent. We're thankful for all of the different things and emotions that we feel because of Christmas and the sending of your Son, Jesus, to our lives. We love you, we love Jesus, and we're so grateful for the wonderful gift of Christmas and for what it means to our church and to our hearts. We also remember the many people around the world who are aching to hear the good news of Jesus Christ and want to see people embody the presence of Christ into their lives. Thank you for Blake and Bekah as they have accepted a call to serve your mission around the world. We pray that your blessings will reside with them in a very special way as they continue to prepare to go. Thank you for leading them to our church. Bless them, Lord, at this time with the opportunity to share the excitement of their work, and help us as we listen to be inspired and to continue to support this couple and many others who go in our name, in your name, to share Jesus around the world. We thank you for this time now, for all of us that we gathered here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay. Morning. Excuse me, I've been struggling with some crud for most of the season, so forgive me. The first church we spoke at, I didn't have hardly any voice, so this is a drastic improvement. We are very, very excited to be here with you all this morning. We're very grateful for the opportunity to come and share with you a little bit about the work that we hope to do. As anyone can tell you, the best laid plans, we have things that we have been told we'll be doing and that we hope to be doing, but if God has other plans once we get there, then that's going to go out the window and we're going to do what God wants us to do. So we'll be sharing a little bit about that. Blake and I are originally from North Carolina, and we graduated from Mars Hill College. We've been married for 2 years. We live in Atlanta now. What else? We both spent some time in Ecuador before we were married, so we speak Spanish already, so we have a good basis. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember. Oh, our initial commitment to the ministry with the Aymara is 3 years, after which we'll look at the work and if what we're doing is sustainable, if it's still holistic, if it's still in line with CBF's values and beliefs, and if our funding continues. We're actually self-funded field personnel. We reap the benefits of the offering for global missions, but we ourselves are self-funded. So we're going to share a little bit about the country of Chile, and then we'll talk a little bit about the work that we hope to do. This is South America. We're surprised sometimes that not everybody knows where Chile is. So, but the recent earthquake and the mining incident in Chile has definitely put it more on the map. As you can see, it's the long, narrow country on the west side of South America, and it's so narrow because of the Andes Mountains. When the first settlers were in South America, they couldn't get over the Andes, and so Argentina kind of stopped there. And then they came down through Peru and had a bunch of fights over land, and Chile was formed. And then, of course, the Pacific Ocean forms the other barrier.
So this is just a map of Chile with the not geographical, but the political distinctions in the states. We've highlighted a few of them that you can see there. The one down at the bottom, or not the bottom, middle way through, is Santiago. That's the capital city. It has its own state. The Copiapó is where the mining rescue took place. So we just wanted to put that on there so you could sort of see in reference to where we're going to be. And then we'll actually be up in the far north where you can see the one labeled Arica. That'll be our entire time. Most of it will be spent in there. And this entire part of the country, just so you know, and you'll see some of that and get to see some of it in just a minute, but it's entirely a desert area. All the way from La Serena all the way up to Arica is the driest desert in the world. So that's where we'll be living and surfing. Also, if you can see the other place highlighted there is Calama. In January, we're going to be making a visit to the ministry sites and also to the Chilean Baptist Union's national meeting, and that's where the meeting will be taking place, just so you have some in on what we're up to and where we're going. And you can see that's the Chilean flag. Also has been seen with the minor rescues and everything, and also to be seen to look kind of like Texas.
Texas would probably argue that.
They probably would.
This slide here, these are pictures from Arica, and that's the biggest city in the region that we're going to be living in. We're actually going to be splitting our time between two places, as you'll see later. The one place we're going to be is so remote that there's no way we could live there all the time because there are no grocery stores, gas stations, etc. So this is going to be kind of our home base area. The big rock in the picture is symbolic in that it was one of the last Peruvian strongholds before the Chileans kicked them out and claimed the land. And the other picture is just a picture of a road going up the Pacific coast. So it's really, really pretty area. You can see that in the road picture that it's pretty sandy, and that's not all because it's beach. It's because it's a desert oasis as well.
Mm-hmm. And just to put into your minds how dry it is, I think the average annual rainfall is 0.05 millimeters per year. So that's how dry it is in this area, and it's reflected in the terrain that you see there. And
in this particular city, we both just read a book talking about the rainfall and how little rainfall there was, and there was a news story. A woman felt a drop of rain on her arm, and so she called the news station because it was such a big deal. And so when the rain comes, it's like the sky is falling, and it's not like rain like we think it. It's just like a drop or two, and that's a big deal for them. So that should put into perspective how little rain they really do get. And
she actually asked the news station if she should evacuate her children. That was her question to the news station.
Yes.
So, the next picture will put into more detail the desert image. It's called the Atacama Desert, if you haven't heard that, through the mining accident and everything. And as you can tell, it's also in the Andes Mountains. So it's desert, completely dry, no rainfall, but it's 10,000 feet elevation. So not necessarily the hottest desert in the world, but it is the driest.
And you can see in this picture that this is one of the roads that we're going to be traveling. We're hoping to split our weeks in half in one place and half in the other. So this road is going to be a road well traveled by us. Our church just finished fundraising to purchase a Jeep for us once we get there. So we're blessed to have transportation because in that area there's no public transportation and really no other vehicles travel that road very often. It doesn't look incredibly safe, but we were really happy to see guardrails in Ecuador. In the Andes there aren't guardrails, and if you can see over the edge, you can see people that needed guardrails. So kind of a little scary, but gorgeous, as you can see.
Yeah, gorgeous, but not much there. We'll be working primarily with a people group called the Aymara, and they're a little-known people group. On the map, you can see that they're mostly in Bolivia. Aymara is also the name of the language, and it's actually one of the official languages of Bolivia. But you can see there's just a little sliver that's spilt over into Chile, and not really spilt over into Chile, it was taken from Bolivia in the Pacific War.
They used to have a port before that war.
Yeah, Bolivia used to have a port. And so you can see that that's where they are. There's a lake up in the left corner called Lake Titicaca, and that's where the civilization first began and spread from that location. And so here you can just see a couple pictures of the Aymara in the typical dress, as well as the national flag of the Aymara people. They're waving there in that assembly. Is this something?
Go ahead.
Oh. In Chile, they're largely a forgotten people, an ignored people. There is precedence in the Chilean government to give, to acknowledge native groups, indigenous groups, and then to give land back, give land rights, water rights. It's happened with a few groups, namely with the Mapuche in South Chile, but they still are, they still haven't recognized the Aymaran people, so they have no land rights, they have no water rights, and that actually comes into acute concern when the mines try to come in and open up the copper mines, because they obviously need a lot of water to maintain a mine, and so the Chilean government can just reroute the water because it's in the ground, and so it belongs to the government. And so that's happened several times where these desert oases that these groups just spring up about in the desert have just dried up because the water's been taken from them.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the cloth?
Oh yes, the cloth I have here and the shawl that she's wearing in that photo are similar. The cool thing about indigenous groups in South America is that each group has a pattern. And in this one, you can see, if you're up close, you can see a sun and I think a water pot and something else. But they can tell each other apart by that cloth. It's different colors. She's wearing one that's a different color, but it would have the same pattern on it. And so if an Aymara person and a Mapuche person ran into each other on the street wearing their traditional clothing, they'd know immediately which group they're from. To us, they look pretty similar, but to them, they're each unique, and I think that's really neat. The same was true in Ecuador, where we were. Each of the different groups had a different pattern to make a distinction between people.
And up in the mountains, we'll be working in a small village. I just said we'll be splitting our time. The small village is named Tiknamar, and here you can see the city entrance. It seems like they take very great pride in just about the colors on it. Mm-hmm. Although the colors don't show up there, it's bright green and blue, for those who can't see it.
Yes.
And so there it says, "Welcome to Tiknamar," wherever you are. And just to give you sort of aspect as you look at the picture, that's the desert around it. You can see it is an oasis. There is some life there, some trees. But if you'll keep talking.
If I'll keep talking. That right there is the village. So you can see just how isolated they are and how vast that desert is. It just blows me away how huge it is. When the mining accident took place, my aunt asked me how far it was from where we were going to be serving, and I was thinking, well, desert, it should be pretty close. It's like 600 miles, 650 miles. So, and they're the same desert. So Chile is much longer than it looks, and so it's pretty huge.
I think it's actually about as long as the United States is wide. I think that's the figure.
Yeah.
But so there's the village. Here you can zoom in. You can see it a bit clearer on that picture there. But the village itself is at 10,000 feet. And look how tall that mountain is behind it. I mean, that's just how massive these large sandy mountains are in the desert. And then another picture is to give some more, another way of looking at it. This is I found this satellite view on Bing Maps. And so you can see it's only, 3 blocks by 4 blocks at its widest. So it's just a tiny little village that's just cropped up in the middle of this oasis.
And the cool thing about this picture is, if you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, it says Tiknamar, has the name of the village on it. In this area, there are so few villages, and it's such a huge desert, that when you're driving along on one of those desert roads, like the picture we showed you, you don't always know that there's a village on the other side of that hill. And so to make themselves known, they put the name of the village in rocks in big letters, which are viewable from space, so that people know that they're there. That's how isolated they are. So there's another village near here named Belén, which is Bethlehem in English, and they've got a sign out because from the road you can't see it. It looks like there's nothing there.
And I did fail to mention about the Aymara people. In Chile, there's a total of about 40 to 50,000 Aymara. A lot of those have migrated into the cities because of what I mentioned about land rights and water rights. There's just not much opportunity left. When your desert oasis dries up, you have to leave. But there are still, I can't remember the figure, but there's still, I think, probably about 5,000-ish still up in the mountains, scattered amongst these little desert villages all over the place.
Oh, excuse me. It's not uncommon to be driving on one of these roads and to just see a lone figure walk in, and you don't know where they've come from, and you have no idea where they're going because there's seemingly nothing around. So they're very, very isolated, and they have no transportation, so they walk everywhere. The Aymara, some stuff does actually grow in the desert. Oregano actually can grow in an area like this, and they raise goats as well. So they live a farming the desert life, and you can imagine how difficult it would be to farm in the desert. So they work the land very hard to try and eke out a living for their families, and because it's so difficult to cultivate the land, they don't have a whole lot of time for their children. The Aymara people, there's a large presence of alcoholism and of domestic violence. There's not a lot of education, as you might imagine, in the middle of a desert. So the parents don't feel equipped to care for the children that they have. So when their children turn about 5 or 6, they send their children to the village that we're going to live in, to this boarding school. And once they send their children to the boarding school, it's difficult to get them there because it's, the children come to this particular boarding school from all over the desert, from villages and just mud huts from all over the desert. So they send their children here, and once their children get here, a lot of times the children don't leave until they've aged out of the school. And a lot of times that means that they have not seen their parents from the time that they entered the school at the age of 5 or 6. Some of the children, their families would live in this particular village or one nearby, and so they'd have regular contact with their families. But a good many of the children that live here don't have any contact with their families once they reach the age of 5 or 6. Because of this, they feel angry and forgotten and lonely, and they just want to feel loved. One of our coworkers visited. He was one of the first North Americans to visit this village, and he said the kids just thronged him. Like, they just wanted someone to touch them, someone to just lay a hand on their head, and it really touched him. And so when he brought that story back to us, obviously it touched us as well. So the children are here, and they have no contact with their parents. They don't have birthday parties. They don't have Christmas. It's a government-run boarding school, so there's not a lot of extra money for fun things. So they have classes, normal class hours, and then after that, they're kind of left to their own devices. They do what kids do. They get into trouble, or they were provided with computers. The government purchased some computers for them, not connected to the internet, I'm sure, in this area. But they destroyed the computers because they didn't know how they worked. The technology was too much for them, and they were bored. So when kids are bored, they entertain themselves, and so it's really sad. And once they age out of the boarding school, typically they leave the desert completely. They move into one of the cities, like the city we're going to be living in for part of the time, and they go from being rural poor to urban poor. And urban poor means homelessness, prostitution, drug use. They don't learn a whole lot of skills here, and because they leave the school probably about 15 or 16, so you've not had time to acquire enough skill to be able to do anything once you move. So
and nor do you have money to continue education once you get to the cities either.
Yes. So my work will be primarily with this boarding school. I'll be working with the teachers to figure out ways to reconnect the children with their families. The main problem is transportation. So if transportation is the big problem, how can we fix it? How can we work together to get these kids seeing their families? Because I can't even imagine not seeing my parents after age 5 or 6. I have no frame of reference for that. And if there's something that can be done to bridge that gap and to give these kids a better start, then I'm going to work with those teachers and do whatever it takes. We're also going to work to try and provide classes for skills so they can leave the school with some kind of knowledge of some kind of trade. And we don't know what that's going to look like right now. The CBF model is to go in and see what your assets are, see what's there, and see what they want, and then work with them to develop a program. So we're not going to go in with all the answers, because goodness knows we do not have all the answers. So it's going to be a learning process as well. I'll also work to try and work with churches here to provide soccer balls and Vacation Bible School and things like that, because a simple soccer ball, which they don't have and can't afford, could provide some entertainment and some exercise and make them feel like they're worth something. So that's a good part. Most of what I'm going to be doing is with the school.
And so if you got to know us, you would realize that we're completely different people, and that's reflected also in the work we're going to be doing. I will help with this, but that's not my primary job.
I'm one of 7 children. Blake is the youngest of 3, so we've been groomed for different things.
Yes. This picture right here, the man there is Marcelo Ramirez. He's a Chilean missionary, grew up in the south of Chile, and the Chilean Baptist Union has sent him, he felt called to go up here, and so they sent him up here to work with the Aymara people. And so just to give you sort of a frame of reference for the ministry situation, Baptist-wise, there are 3 Baptist pastors in the entire north of Chile, and Marcelo is one of them. There's one who has seminary education, and there's not much opportunity to get further training in ministry in the north, and there's only one of them who works with the Aymara people, and that's Marcelo. So as you can tell, he's a little overwhelmed by the job that he has to do. His original vision was to start kind of like Paul and just plant churches among the Aymara people, and he wanted to start in Chile, go up into Peru, and then go up into Ecuador, probably transitioning to the Quichua people eventually. But he's sort of gotten bogged down. He's realized that the work is much larger than he ever imagined it could be. And so he pastors a church in the city of Arica, as well as trying to maintain these 8 to 10 little village missions up in the mountains. But as you can tell, between where we'll be living in Arica and Tignamar, it's 4 hours, and I think that's one of the closer villages. And so as you can probably imagine, it's hard for him to visit all these villages, even once every 2 weeks probably, to get around to all of them. And so the only discipleship these villages receive, the only worship services they receive, is whenever he's able to come. So a lot of my job will be settling in with the people of Tignamar, learning who they are, trying to get to know them, learning what it's like to live the life that they live, and then in time offering just sort of basic discipleship. I don't know if you all did the Faith Comes by Hearing, the 40 days of listening to the New Testament, but that organization also has the Aymara New Testament audio Bibles, and so they have those already, and that's a great resource, but that's really all they have. And so I'll be trying to help them devise ways to study the Bible and to do church that's appropriate for their culture. At the same time, while doing that, Marcelo and myself, he'll still be working with us, we'll be trying to discern people in the group, the Aymara people, who sense a calling to leadership, who sense that God wants them to become a minister in the church. And obviously that'll look different than it does here, but then we'll try to devise ways to give pastoral education and lay leadership training to them that fits their lifestyle, their rural lifestyle, where obviously a church is not going to be able to support the minister, and obviously they can't go for 3, 4, 5 years to school to study. And so that'll be a large part of my work. There is a Chilean Baptist seminary in Santiago, the capital, and they have a relationship with a church in Arica that allows them to do sort of satellite seminary courses. And so I'll also be working with them on the coast to try to offer more education to the pastors there who I believe desperately want to learn more and to make better their ministries, but just there's no one there to help them out. And so that'll be the largest part of my work, working in discipleship and theological education.
Blake mentioned the one pastor with the seminary education, so he's the one pastor qualified to teach anybody else, and he's in his 80s, and he'd like a break. So hopefully if we could train more people to do that work, then it can multiply, and that poor guy can get a rest.
Yeah, and and that is the goal. It's not that that we move down there and I move down there and just sit down and start teaching forever and ever. I'm in. The goal is that we can train up enough people to where they can replicate it and do it themselves, and so that the Chilean Baptist Church is strengthened, and so therefore the kingdom is strengthened as well.
Yeah, the goal of any good missionary is to work yourself out of a job, is to get the people so they can do the work themselves and ease your way back out.
So the last picture we have for you is just what I think to be a really cool picture. I don't know if you can see it. It's a satellite image. Looking down Chile, you can see the Andes Mountains on one side and the Pacific on the other, but there's nothing important about that picture. I just like it. We do want to spend a few moments just talking about the different ways of giving that CBF has come up with now. As you all know, it's the economy feels like it's slowly trying to recover, but we're still in one of the worst recessions in a while. And so that's forced nonprofits like the Cooperative Baptist to be creative with how we continue supporting and providing the work that God has called us to do. And so that's made them sort of approach giving in three different ways. The first way is the way that everybody is most familiar with. It's the classic model of the offering for global missions. And that one it's a great model. It funds the fully funded field personnel of the Cooperative Baptist, as well as it helps those of us who are self-funded. This computer was provided by them. We've been put on a team structure, and so when we get to the field, we'll probably be the only Cooperative Baptist field personnel in South America. And so that team structure is very important for us, and they help us to get to one meeting a year with a stipend for travel. What else?
They also provide a financial funnel. Blake and I are very different, but we're also the same in that we're not really organized and we don't really do finances. So it's great that they do. The CBF works as a funnel. They'll funnel funds to us, so we don't have to start our own nonprofit. A lot of field personnel choose to start their own profit, and that's great, but we don't feel called to do that.
At least not yet. And they also have a member care network that's funded by the Offering for Global Missions. And that's a network of doctors, of counselors, of really any sort of service that you can think of, that if we ever have a need, they can plug us into that. And we actually have member care providers that are assigned to us that are always checking up on us, because it will be difficult to live in such an isolated situation. So that's the Offering for Global Missions, and that's the most common way. And actually I have, if I can squeeze it out here, we brought some flyers with us that you can take with you. And this is just sort of it just tells all the different field personnel where they are, what they're doing, and you can see a map to see where that money is going, what it's funding. The second way of giving is through project funds, and that's an option that's available to any CBF field personnel, funded or self-funded. And it's where they can, if they see a need, say we get there and we realize that these people really want Bibles and they just can't afford them, we can set up a project fund to provide Bibles. Or say we realize that they really need anti-parasite medications and can't afford them, we can set up a fund to provide for those medications. And so every year CBF puts out this gift catalog. I don't know if you all are familiar with this, but you can just flip through it, and anything you can think of, from providing medicines to digging clean water wells to buying seminary textbooks. So really you can give to exactly what you feel called to give to, anything that your passion desires. And so that's the second way. And so the third way that CBF has dealt with the economic crisis, if you will, has been to begin commissioning the self-funded positions. Just because the economy is not doing so well doesn't mean that God doesn't call people and doesn't lead people to serve. And so they've started this process of commissioning people, of giving that stamp of approval, giving that framework to support them, and then giving them the way to go and raise the funds. And so that's the category that we fall into, and many, a growing number, fall into that category.
Yeah, anyone that has been commissioned by CBF since 2009 has been self-funded.
And so I lost what I brought up here. We have prayer cards and pledge cards, if any of y'all are interested in either that. We also have a prayer email that comes out monthly. We have a sign-up sheet over there if you just want to keep track of what we're up to and how we're doing, and pray for us. That's a a vital part of the ministry. So we encourage you to sign up for that and take a prayer card and put it on your fridge to remember us. Anything else you can think of?
No, I think that's about all. Does anyone have any questions about CBF, the work we're going to be doing, us, anything like that? Yes.
You said there's not internet. How are you all going to stay contacted with
There's, up in the village of Tignomar, there's absolutely nothing. We saw power lines, and we think it's probably rationed a certain part of the day. There's no cell phone service, no telephones, no internet. But in the city of Frederica, there's everything. They even have 3G internet. So it's a pretty connected city. So that's why our home base is down there, so
Yeah.
we can maintain connection.
And we'll have a spot GPS in case of an emergency. We can mash the button and it calls Houston, which then calls Chile to tell them that there's a problem.
Yeah. And it'll send our GPS coordinates, and they can find us in the desert.
Yeah.
Hopefully in not a few days.
Yeah, hopefully sooner than later. But it will be very isolated. Good thing we like each other.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yes. The water situation, being out in the Sahara Desert, is it strictly from that oasis around which the village is built?
Yes, that's why we say this is what we think we're going to be doing, but they don't have clean water. We'll have to take in our own water from the city when we go. But the water is from these oases. And there are also the Inca, when they lived in this area, they devised these irrigation systems that nobody can figure out now. And they're still functioning, and so they're still funneling water to some pretty isolated places. So from oases, we don't know about the groundwater situation. There is some runoff from some of the mountains a little farther away.
From the glacial
Yeah.
caps and everything.
Yeah, but water is definitely big. Some of them do, but not really near where we're going to be. We'll probably see it, but you could see pretty far out there.
Yeah. And like Bekah said, that a lot of our work, while we say it's the school and for me the theological education, discipleship, church planning stuff, a lot of it will center around community development and clean water issues, advocacy rights, since they are forgotten, and trying to connect the Chilean church to the people, to try to network and to build the communities up. Any other questions?
We'll be around after the service if you want to ask us a question that you don't feel like, why is everybody leaving? No, I'm kidding. If you want to ask us a question that you don't feel like raising your hand and asking in front of everybody. But thank you very much for your time. Yes. Will there be, well, I don't know. There was an earthquake in Chile earlier this year in February or March, and it was in the southern part of the country, and so the place that we're going to be going wasn't affected at all. It was mainly the southern parts, the bottom parts of it. That's a good question. Yes?
Didn't the earthquake, tear up everything that was in Chile and stuff?
It did cause a good bit of damage in the southern regions of the country, but since Chile is actually the strongest country in Latin America financially and politically, they're very stable, and so their government was able to take care of. They didn't want outside help. A lot of people. I've got some phone calls. I work at CBF, and people are asking, "Well, what are we doing in Chile?" And it's like, well, they don't want us to do anything. They're going to handle this. What CBF is focusing on is rebuilding churches, because the government doesn't rebuild churches and parsonages. But on the whole, they've been able to recover on their own from that.
Yes.
What about a tsunami?
That is a possibility. Our pastor's sons are 6 and 8, and they watched a special on Discovery Channel about tsunamis, and that night they prayed for Blake and I that we wouldn't experience a tsunami. They were relieved to find we weren't really in an earthquake zone, but tsunamis are a possibility, but there's not been one in a very long time. So, but that doesn't mean anything, as we all know. But good question.
Well, thank you all very much.
Yes. We look forward to being with you all in the service this morning and sharing in that. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.